I want to speak this morning about the uh, crisis engulfing British universities, a crisis 2 decades in the making, over 2 decades in the making, and now reaching a critical stage from which universities may not be able to recover. Universities, like banks, were at one point thought to be too big to fail. That's no longer the case. This is not a short-term hiccup, but a profound and structural failure of policy, governance, political imagination, and English universities particularly are facing a financial precipice with 3 quarters projected to be loss-making by 2026, thousands of jobs under threat. And the question has to be what went wrong. Partly it's Brexit. Partly it's the universities relied so much on foreign students that when that tap was switched off by Brexit, the whole thing started to topple. Let's begin in 1998 with Tony Blair's noble but ill-fated ambition to send 50% of young people to university. Laudable in principle, it was a betrayal in practice, not of students, but of the Robbins Report of 1963, which insisted that mass higher education must be matched with adequate infrastructure, governance and funding. But Blair's introduction of tuition fees and student loans set the sector on a market trajectory. That trajectory was accelerated disastrously in 2012 when fees trebled to £9,000 and the student numbers cap was lifted. It was, in effect, a Thatcherite model on steroids, masquerading as progressive expansion. So, fundamentally, the problem with the university expansion, with the university extension, was that it was predicated on deceit. The universities responded as one might expect in a deregulated market. They expanded, they borrowed, they built, they competed, and many became property speculators and marketing machines, more adept at recruiting than educating, more adept at building new dormitories or acquiring old ladies' houses. Because I remember particularly in Oxford there was almost a competition in some of the streets, particularly streets like Observatory Street, where a lot of elderly ladies were living, and they're all so eager to be part of this college or part of that college vicariously by gifting their house to the university when they died. The result: fragile institutions built on inflated assumptions, vulnerable to inflation, interest rate rises, and fluctuations in international student numbers. Now 26% of the student body. And these students, a revenue lifeline, became political footballs. Bans on dependents, visa restrictions, and an increasingly hostile Home Office have caused a collapse in international enrolments and thus in funding, and it's a crisis of our own making. The collapse is not only financial, it's also philosophical. What's a university for? And since the early 2000s, managerialism and new public management metrics, TEF, REF, NSS, have reduced education to tick box exercises. Courses are branded like products, students are customers, learning is modularized, the subject of bureaucracy anyway, and de-intellectualized. And throughout it all, students are exploited. So a student may be offered a place, the payment may be made, and then the Home Office refuses a visa, and the payment is retained both by the Home Office and by the university. And this is madness, and again, couched in deception. We see the casualization of staff, the howling hollowing of humanities, the prioritization of graduate salaries over social impact. Academic freedom, once the cornerstone of university life, is now a casualty of key performance indicators. In other words, popularity governs what is being done. But university isn't about popularity. University is about research. The decay is not inevitable. There are concrete pragmatic steps that could be taken to restore grants and stabilise fees, to reverse the tuition freeze, to link fees to inflation, to pair this with a renewed system of direct public grants, to welcome international students without exploiting them, to create capped, free, fair structures and remove them from net migration figures. to ensure a radical redistribution of student places, particularly to support institutions in Wales and post-92 universities. That is essential to work out what is the difference between this university and that university. What do they do differently? To reform the control of universities, the way universities govern themselves. Vice chancellors must face clawback mechanisms. Governance should prioritise teaching and learning over vanity projects. And we need to revive the Robin spirit. We need to fund education as a public good, not as a market force. Education must be about expanding human potential, not maximising shareholder value. In 2025, students are paying more for less. Universities are shrinking not in size but in vision. And this is not just a policy failure, it's a cultural surrender. We must recover our faith in the university as a place of free inquiry, of social mobility and of national renewal, because if we don't fight for universities now, we will soon find that we have too few left to save.